Hello and welcome to the TML Domain podcast. Thank you for joining us. And where can we start? The magical season continues for the Leafs, even though their 15-game point streak comes to an end against the New York Rangers. There's still a lot to love and enjoy about what's happening this season with the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think we need to definitely start up with a lot of shout outs to some guys who don't really get noticed that much or maybe don't get enough love in this town. And I think, first of all, we got to talk about Mitch Marner's point streak. And even though it came to an end, you know, it was a good night for him. He had a lot of chances to get points. Sometimes you just don't get the bounces. Unfortunately, it came to an end, but it was a lot of fun while it lasted. So kudos to him. He set a record uh, that I don't think is going to be touched. I don't think 23 games or 24 games is going to be something that like anybody will touch. But you never know, guys with Matthews and Nylander on the team. You never know. You could always get hot and make that happen. So kudos to Mitch Marner. And I think one thing that doesn't really get talked about in this town unless, somebody goes into a funk, is Mitch Marner was on this incredible point streak and he has 37 points on the season. And, Matthews is 2 points behind him with 35, which is very impressive considering how slow of a start he had to scoring goals on the season. William Nylander is only 4 points behind Mitch Marner at 33, and that deserves a lot of love. Willie doesn't really get a lot of he doesn't really get a lot of flowers in this town just because Toronto's mostly been the kind of town that loves the Darcy Tuckers and the Wendell Clarks and the Doug Gilmores. He's an uber skilled guy. He makes the game look real easy. It's easy to look at his game on television and say he's not trying, but real hockey fans, people who have played the game, understand how hard it is to make the game look that simple. To skate as effortlessly as he does, to get up to top speed as quickly as he does, to get that wrister off, pinpoint accuracy, lots of velocity, and he definitely has hands too. He makes really good plays. It's not something to be taken lightly. I think it's very short-sighted to watch a Leafs game and be like, Willie, he's soft. He doesn't. That's not the case at all. If you've watched this season, Willie is back-checked. Willie is knocking guys into boards. He's stripping defensemen of pucks and creating shorthanded goals, or he's stripping defensemen of pucks and he's putting the puck in the net. The hustle is there. It's just it takes an uber amount of talent, an extreme level of talent to be able to make the game look that easy and effortless where you watch him go all out and then you say, well, he's not trying even though he's going all out. I think it's very short-sighted to say that. And John Tavares, who last year got a lot of negative um, I would say negative coverage in this town. He's got 30 points. So he's seven behind Mitch Marner. And even though Mitch Marner was on this crazy streak of points in consecutive games, John Tavares is only 7 points back. And the crazy thing is, when you're looking at the goal scoring, William Nylander leads the Leafs with 17 goals. And that's another thing that we need to acknowledge is most probably, Austin Matthews will end the season with the most amount of goals on the Leafs, but it's impressive to be 31 games in. And with John Tavares at 14, Austin Matthews at 15, to see William Nylander there. So, another thing that we definitely need to talk about are the gambles that Kyle Dubas decided to undertake in net. There was some hesitation with Matt Murray and Ilya Samsonov and how proven are they? And not only are they proven or not proven, but do they still have what it takes to go deep in the playoffs? And I made a podcast last year where I specifically talked about the Leafs need to look into big butterfly goaltenders. I may have said big butterfly goaltenders. I don't know how many times I said it. I just kept saying big butterfly goaltenders. And it's not that, Jack Campbell wasn't a tall guy. He's 6'4". He just played very small. So I think looking at the analytics, and I think that's really what Dubas did. He looked at a couple of guys that he identified, and they went after other goalies. Um, but they ended up trading for Matt Murray, and if the Washington Capitals made a horrible decision in releasing Ilya Samsonov, and the Leafs got him at 1.8, which is like an unbelievable price for a guy who just broke Felix Potvin's I think it is six consecutive home start win streak. So six consecutive wins at home to start the season. And Ilya Samsonov's got back-to-back shutouts. And it's very impressive. He's a very good goalie. He's very sound. He makes it look easy. He's you get a shot and he just blockers it off. It's pretty impressive to see. And Matt Murray has played some decent games. I mean, this week alone we saw the Leafs beat the Dallas Stars. I believe it's the Dallas Stars and the LA Kings and the Calgary Flames. So it's the three more very entertaining games. There's two shutouts and one really thrilling game versus Calgary where it was a lot of back and forth, and the Leafs looked like for the first time that they were not feeling the mojo so much, but they did score 5 goals. So yeah, I mean, it's 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 rare in this town when the Leafs have two goalies, a starter and a backup, which Murray was supposed to be the starter, Samsonov was supposed to be the backup. They put these guys in back-to-back games and they got shutouts. I mean, I haven't seen that level of confidence in a Maple Leaf tandem in a very long time. Me as a fan, it doesn't matter who they announce, whether they announce Murray's going to start tonight or they announce Samsonov's going to start tonight. There's zero hesitation on my part. There's no butterflies as a fan thinking, "Oh, is he going to play good tonight? Is he not?" I really don't. It doesn't matter to me who they put in net. With the way they're playing, the hustle that they have on defense, and TJ Brody just came back, which makes the defense that much better. Uh, they're they're playing well, and the goalies are not letting in any soft goals that really hurt the team. And I think every goalie in the NHL lets in soft goals. They let in bad goals. It happens to everybody. It happens to Shesterkin and Vasilevsky. But I think the key to the Leafs goaltending this season has been timely saves. Because you see that game um, versus the Dallas Stars. The first period, the Leafs didn't look all that great. In the LA, the Leafs didn't look all that great, but you have a goalie in there that makes a couple of saves, you get settled in, and away you go. And I think that's a very important thing because you don't always have your legs to start the game. We like to think as fans when we sit at home and watch the games that these guys are always ready, always up and raring to go. And sometimes you just, whether it's the travel, whether it's where you are in the city, whether when you weren't able to take a great nap before the game or whatever it is, it's always easy to have a game day routine and have it something interfere with that. So you're not always going to be ready to go at the beginning of the games in the first 5 minutes or the first 10 minutes. And the Leafs this year have the level of goaltending because you saw it against Minnesota was probably the best example. Minnesota and New Jersey this year because New Jersey was all over the Leafs, just peppering them with shots. And New Jersey couldn't get the equalizer. And then all of a sudden you look at Dallas, and Dallas had tons of chances, just cross crease passes, one timers, and we the Leafs ended up with a shutout that night. And then you look at um, Minnesota was probably the best because at the end of the game, you make a very small, Sandy makes a very small mistake on a pass, puck goes up the boards, bounces, and right to a Minnesota player, and they one time it to Kaprizov, and Murray comes across and makes that save. I mean, like sometimes you just need a goalie to make a save. It's not about how many, it's about when they make the save because it could be a 19 save night, but if that 19th save is in that moment with 3 seconds left and Kaprizov's gonna tie the game, then 19 saves that night was more worth more than a 30 save night. And I think it's just it's been interesting to see the gamble that they made and how the goaltending has performed this year. I haven't seen this level of goaltending in a long time, and we may have to go back to Ed Belfour to really have this kind of confidence in Leafs goaltending. But uh, kudos to Kyle Dubas for making that decision. It's a tough decision to not pay the guy you already know and to go with something new and gamble, considering he's a lame duck GM and he doesn't have a contract. I mean, these guys right now, I was just looking at the stats, but I'm going to bring it up again just so I don't misspeak. But Ilya Samsonov is tops in both goals against and save percentage, I believe. Is that correct? Yeah. Goals against and save percentage, Ilya Samsonov is number one. And Matt Murray is fourth in save percentage. So Ilya Samsonov is in .939 and leads the NHL, and Matt Murray is .924 and is fourth in the NHL. So it's easy to look at the Leafs goals for and goals against per game. Ooh, they jumped up to second place. So the Leafs are second in the NHL in goals against per game at 2.35, and the Bruins, being the best in the NHL, are at 2.14. So, I think looking at these games where the Leafs are getting peppered by New Jersey and Minnesota and Dallas, I see something the Leafs have sorely lacked in the playoffs, and that's this level of goaltending. Not that the goaltending wasn't talented before. The key here is making the key save at the key time. And when you look at the Leafs versus Tampa last year, game six, that game was over. Tampa was down and out. Then all of a sudden they get two penalty calls in their favor, and when you look at that Kucherov goal on the power play, Campbell didn't see it. He's not a butterfly goaltender. He doesn't just drop to his knees. He doesn't know how to be big. And when you look at the goalies that we have today, and they don't always see the puck or they don't always know where it is, but they know how to be in position and look big and have the puck hit them. So, it's this could definitely be the year if the Leafs can be top two in goals against, or maybe even the best goals against, and win a Jennings, which was my very, very hot take to start the season on Twitter. Um, if the Leafs can win a Jennings and these goalies can pull it off and the Leafs win a round, there's no way you can look at Kyle Dubas and say the decisions he makes are bad decisions. I think letting Hyman go was a great idea. I think letting Campbell go was a great idea. I was never a fan of Campbell. I like the guy, I like the person, I like the human being. I like his personality, the way he conducts himself. But at the end of the day, as a fan of the Toronto Maple Leafs, the Leafs are in the business of winning. And that requires tough decisions. And letting Campbell go was a great idea. This offseason, the Leafs are going to have to let a lot of guys go that are going to be tough decisions. But Kerfoot, Ingvald, these guys have to go. They're with the Leafs have too many of these guys, and they need to augment the roster. And they're seeing the difference between having Camp, having Yarn Crook. Um, Players like that are making a difference. Connor Timmins is a very low key trade, but Connor Timmins has looked great on the Leafs back end. Like I haven't seen the guy make a mistake yet. He actually, when he has the puck and he makes simple plays, like he has been since he's been a Leaf, he pretty much looks like Brody on the ice. Him and Brody are interchangeable. Like they're steady, they make simple passes, they're moving the puck, and they're playing defense. I haven't, I see both of them as in the same mold, and it's Kyle Dubas is great at making low key transactions like that. Because last year we got Labushkin for nothing, and then all of a sudden this guy turned out to be a great right-handed defenseman who was blowing people up at the blue line. And I was surprised that they let him go. To be honest, for the price tag that he signed in Buffalo. But then all of a sudden, you get Giordano on a great deal, and he's playing great, and Sandin and Liljegren are really stepping up and evolving into great defensemen. So I think overall, there aren't a lot of bad decisions. I mean, in a cap world, you have to be very cognizant of how you spend every dollar. And I think, I think, see, like Samsonov is on a 1 year deal, and he's at 1.8, and everybody says, oh, well, he's going to be expensive. Those days are done in Toronto. Don't listen to the media that like, oh, what's his face? Nylander's having a great year. Oh, he's going to be so expensive. The Leafs have clearly established a hierarchy, right? Mitch Marner, who's whatever, it has as the second best player on the Leafs is at 10.9. So for you to come and ask for $10 million is not it's not so much about your goals and points as it is where you rank on the team. The Leafs have established a hierarchy, and it took a while to establish that. The same as like a Tampa Bay has. When they say, oh, Stamkos gets 8.5, so Kucherov gets this, and the Leafs have established that hierarchy as well. So if you have a core four and you're the fourth on that core, which is William Nylander, there is a hierarchy there. I think he's going to be definitely he's going to get a raise from the 6.9 that he is now, but I think it's going to be more if you're signing long term at 8 years, it'll probably be like 8.8, just under 9 or 9. I think if you look at Barzal's 9.15 or something like that, I I I I don't think Nylander is going to look at Huberdeau's $10 million and be like, I want that. I don't. It doesn't make any sense. Calgary overpaid there a lot. In general, a starting goaltender in the NHL is a $5 million goalie. The days of paying goalies over a ridiculous amount are totally gone. Bobrovsky is definitely an outlier. Price is an outlier, and Vasilevsky you have to pay because he's amazing. But everybody else who has a starting goaltender, if your starting goaltender is great, he's a $5 million goalie. We've seen it with Markstrom and Saros and everybody else. It's hard to get over $5 million as a goalie, regardless of whether you're a starter or not. So I think the Leafs are going to look at Ilya Samsonov, and they're probably going to give him like a 4x4 or something like that. He's at a great age. He's young. I think he's definitely the goalie of the future. He's handling this market well. His post-game press conferences are hilarious. He's making the reporters laugh. He's got a good rapport with them. I love the guy. Like he's got a great personality. When I watch him talk, he's hilarious. So, um, yeah, I Samsonov is definitely is quickly becoming one of my favorite Maple Leaf goalies of all time. Just his personality, the way he jokes. He doesn't take anything too seriously. He's always talking about having a smile on the face. He's like, the boys have a smile, everything is good, the boys are laughing. He always refers to the room and the boys smiling, and he's like, it's good, the boys are smiling. So he's very cognizant. And players like Tavares and Matthews have all talked about. Even the coach said it's like he's fun to interact with. He's got a great personality, and you need guys like that in Toronto. I think if you take yourself too seriously and you take everything else too seriously, like the way John Tavares does, I think it could hamper your game if you're not elite. And you need a very laissez-faire attitude in Toronto. Like you can't take anything you see on social media seriously because, this fan base is so large and opinions vary. Like the spectrum of opinion is so wide. And I've been podcasting for 3 years now. I've had a website for over 10 years. I've been on Twitter for a very long time. And the spectrum of opinion in Leafs Nation is so wide. Like, especially on like, let's say, for example, William Nylander, the spectrum of opinion is so large. Like, it varies. Most, like, you say 40% thinks he's a bum, 40% thinks he's elite, and everybody else in the middle is just like, it depends on the night. If he has a good night, he's good. If he has a bad night, you should trade this guy. Like, it's crazy. Like, you can't take anything on social media seriously. It's everybody has a different way of rating what they see. It's not necessarily the eye test, but it's why isn't everybody hitting everybody on the ice? Some people are just like that. Very simple. If you're not always hitting somebody or finishing your check, you're worthless. It doesn't matter how many goals or points you score. And yeah, definitely the opinions vary. And as a player, you got to be able to handle that. You got to be able to handle the media, the articles, the newspapers, the blogs. You got to be able to handle all that and still just be you, play your game, go home, be the same with your family, all that stuff. It's very important. But I mean, there's not much to complain about this season. The Leafs are doing great. They're nipping on the heels of the Boston Bruins. We have some games against them. We basically the Leafs have to win every not that they have to win every single game against the Bruins, but it would be nice to finish first in this division and have the Bruins and the Tampa Bay Lightnings just battle it out in the first round and then just see who comes out on top. Let's see if they're battered and bruised after 7 games. And the Leafs can get a wild card team. And this year it looks like, based on the standings, let's look into that a little bit. If we're looking at the wild card, ooh, hmm, it could be any of Rangers, Islanders, Washington, or Florida. Detroit's in there too. Yeah, like I wouldn't mind the Leafs playing any one of these guys because other than, well, technically, Shesterkin and Sorokin are dangerous goalies where they can get hot enough where they can steal games, but I feel like the Leafs have that level of goaltending as well. So it doesn't scare you that much, but Washington, Detroit, Florida. Florida's probably one of the biggest drop-offs this year. I don't think they're going to make the playoffs. I don't know how you go from winning the conference to missing the playoffs. I mean, Florida's one of those crazy hockey debates. I have it all the time. People tell me, I ask people, the people who are big time Leaf haters, I'll always ask them, what are the top 5 teams in the NHL. And last year, Florida was included in that top five because they were playing so good in the regular season. And I said, well, tell me why Florida's in there. And they're like, based on points. I go, well, the Leafs are the fourth best team in the NHL. So how come that doesn't count? They're like, oh, well, they haven't won a playoff and round in so long, and they haven't really done anything in the playoffs, and there's no real cup contention. And I go, tell me how that doesn't apply to the Florida Panthers. They haven't won anything in a long time, long time. Like they've been a tire fire for decades. So it's one of those things where like Leaf haters will like the Florida Panthers, but they have a very similar track record to the Toronto Maple Leafs. No real playoff success, no cup contention. They have good regular seasons like the Leafs do, but it's hard to say one is good and one's not bad because clearly you're just hating on the Leafs, right? So that's a good one. Last year, I was, there was a lot of people telling me that the Florida Panthers were a great team, and I go, tell me how their track record is any different than the Leafs. But that is, we'll see how, well, let's see. I think the Leafs have the Washington Capitals coming up. They got the Tampa Bay Lightning, St. Louis. I think come January 1st, which to me, January 1st is always like people always say, where are you 20 games in the season or 30 games in the season? That usually tells us who's going to make the playoffs. But January 1st, I think things really start ratcheting up because you got January, February, March. April's always, April's not really, I don't really count April, just because usually teams don't really play a lot of games in April. Maybe they have two or three games in April. Well, let's look at the schedule. I think usually in April, teams don't really play a lot of games. Oh, holy smoke. Leafs got like 7 or 8 games in April this year. Looks like the playoffs are starting a little bit late. So, yeah, you got January, February, March, and things really start ratcheting it up because if you're down in the standings and you need to make up points or you got games on hand, you want to make sure you make good in those games in hand and you really start moving up the standings and solidify your spot. And I think the Leafs are in a good spot come January 1st. I think they're going to be second in their division. They're going to be top three in the Eastern Conference, which is going to put them in a good spot because their goaltending is just going to rotate slowly. There's no point. See, like, it's one of those things we talk about in Toronto is not handing anything too easy to any one player. And there's no point in the Leafs saying, "Hey, Matt Murray, you're the number one." I think right now they need to keep both into the loop, keep rolling both goaltenders. There's it to hand the so I think soon as you hand the reins to one guy and say, "Hey, Matt Murray, you're our starter. It's going to be 60-40 from now on." That's when the pressure kicks in and that's when you start messing up. I think right now to tell the guys that you're doing 50-50 and we're going to see come the end of the season whose performance is better, whose stats are better, who we think is going to match up better with whoever we're playing in the first round, because I think that's very important too. It's if you're playing the Washington Capitals, I want Samsonov in that. If we're playing a team like, let's say the Florida Panthers, I think it's better to have Murray in net because when they see a big goaltender, Florida is the type of team that will tend to aim high and try to pick corners, and they miss the net a lot, and I think that really hurts them too. So yeah, there's definitely no point in handing the reins to anybody or anointing anybody. I think both of them have great stats. They're both top 10 in every stat. It's definitely been fun to watch, but but come January, wherever the Leafs are in the standings, hopefully that di dictates a lot about what's going to happen with the trade deadline. The Leafs cannot go quietly into the night when it comes to the trade deadline. Leafs definitely need to figure out the third line center spot, and even though Holmberg has been really good and he's played well and he's contributing, I think you really need to go get a third line center. I know there's some rumors about Ryan O'Reilly out there. There's some rumors about Bo Horvat. It's like the Leafs need a left winger as well, and I'm frothing at the mouth, just waiting for Matthew Nyes to show up. Matthew Nyes right now is one of the top NCAA players still. He hasn't taken the season off. He hasn't rested on his laurels. He's gotten better. This guy's going to come and take a top six spot, and it's going to be on the left wing on the second line. And depending on how fast he shoots up the charts, he could be on the first line. I mean, he definitely has a really good relationship with Matthews. So it's definitely possible there, but left wing, like you look at Kerfoot and Engvall, and even though they do some good things, you can't have Kerfoot and like two or three goals on the season make it $3.5 million. I think that's the kind of spot that you have to go and give to someone cheap like Holmberg or someone on entry level like Nick Robertson. And I got to take a minute and talk about Nick Robertson. Man, this kid has horrible luck. I think I think the issue with Nick Robertson becomes they keep telling him hit, 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 be aggressive, get on the puck, create turnovers, and he doesn't know how to protect his body the way like a Phil Kessel does or a William Nylander who don't ever get hurt. And it's not about avoiding checks and it's not about being soft. It's about knowing how to protect your body because this kid is not that big. He is strong, but you can't always go into every puck battle on the boards with complete abandon. Like they fill his head with all this like rough and gritty stuff, and this is what gets him into injuries. You gotta just let him play his game. Like he goes into the boards, and the bigger guy just pushes him over into the boards, and he dislocates his shoulder. I mean, it's so sad to see someone so talented, considering what you see what his brother does in Dallas. Like Nick Robertson has a lot of that in him, and it sucks to see someone so talented and with so much upside um, have the kind of luck that he does. But yeah, I think the Leafs need a center, not so much a defenseman. They have Timmins now. Riley's coming back. We don't know what's going to happen with Muzzin, but he could make a late season push and be ready for the playoffs and be a depth guy. But left winger is necessary, center is necessary because that third line became so much better once a natural center showed up like Holmberg, who could make some plays. So you definitely see the value of having a great third line center. Like you, Kerfoot and Engvall, I would if Vancouver blows it up, I would go and get Ilya Mikheyev back. He's a foreign change player, 4 million in change player, and then what you're gonna do is you're gonna trade a guy like Kerfoot who's an expiring contract, and maybe you get Ilya Mikheyev back as a left winger. I mean, they need it. They need a left winger. They need a natural left winger. He's fast. We saw what he did on the on the penalty kill last year. He fits so well with the speedy Leafs, and it's a shame that we have to let him go. But we can't have Kerfoot and Engvall on this team. I think with Yarncrook coming back, a guy like Mikheyev and you put Mikheyev and Yarncrook on the same line with a guy like Holmberg or Camp, I think that's all kinds of success that line's gonna have. But Yeah. Um, Tune in next week. I'm gonna have a surprise for you guys next week. Um, and yeah, thanks for tuning in. I really appreciate it. Have yourselves a good weekend, and like and subscribe if you like the content. I appreciate it. Thank you guys.